Mount wins a penalty, Jorginho scores a penalty, Chelsea win 2-0 over Brighton up at Stamford Bridge. Let's get into it.
And blue is the colour. Essien! Drogba! Lampard! That could be the
Greetings! Welcome back to Couch Critic. Dennis P back live and direct, musing Chelsea Football Club. Now before we get into that Brighton Chelsea review, could you please do me a big favor and hit that like button, that subscribe button, and that bell notification button to keep up with the latest and the newest. Okay, so Chelsea played host to Brighton up at Stamford Bridge on Saturday and emerged 2-0 winners. Goal scorers Jorginho from a penalty and Willian from a beautifully constructed attacking move, one of many in the game I might add, to make the score 2-0, effectively kill the game. For this particular match review, I'm going to be focusing on a couple different things. I'm going to start with Jorginho's overall game and how he's showing signs that he's adapted to English football very, very well. I'm also going to go into the emerging partnerships that we're starting to see on the pitch, formulate, and also the wavelength the squad seems to be getting on. And then I'm going to finish up with the team pressing philosophy and when that is best used and when it's not best used. Now, Chelsea had a ton of quality goal scoring opportunities in that first half, and at the center of a lot of those attacking moves was Jorginho. I thought he had a fantastic game, and from minute 1 to minute 90, it was his final ball distribution, his incisive passes to attackers to get into 1v1 situations that were on full display. I think he did a great job of illustrating that there's more to his game than just being a regista, a guy that sets tempo and, gets a team playing football. Felt like yesterday he was very, very adept at getting the team into goal scoring opportunities, which is not something we saw very often under Midfield. We saw him more so at the base of the attack, and basically the guy that was orchestrating things, not being the guy that delivered the final ball to get goal-scoring opportunities. And as his game evolves, I think we're going to start to see strengths in his game that may not have been easily identifiable in Maurizio Sarri's system come to the fore, and then add another dimension to this attacking philosophy. Overall, I thought Jorginho had a complete game. The defensive phase was very good. He was very good at helping out the back four, winning tackles, and also winning fouls to relieve pressure at the right time. The movement in the midfield was very good, and let's be honest here, Chelsea came out in a 4-2-3-1 with Ross Barkley partnered with Jorginho. And as the game progressed, it looked more like a 4-1-4-1 where Jorginho was the only one holding. To put it bluntly, Ross Barkley just looked extremely uncomfortable in a holding too, and it's clearly not his most natural position. And as the game wore on, he just resorted to type. He moved further up the pitch where he can get on the ball a little bit more and feel like he's more involved in the game. And, as a result, it left Jorginho as the only really holding midfielder that we had. And he did a great job of covering those spaces, covering those gaps, compensating for where we might have had another holding midfielder in there. Between that and the ice in the veins nonchalant penalty that he takes to win the match, it leaves you little to question why he was my man of the match. But going forward, whether Chelsea play 4-2-3-1, 4-1-4-1, or 4-3-3, I just think there needs to be more balance in the midfield. Now for me, when I watch Mason Mount play, I think that he's best deployed in the central areas of the pitch, whether it be deeper if he wants to play in the 8 like that Frank Lampard role, or if he wants to play in the 10 where he's more of a hard-working, sort of like an Oscar kind of number 10. And that's mainly down to his work rate. I think his work rate is so high that it makes it more valuable in the central areas of the pitch where, the engine room is and where a lot of the most contested balls are and whatnot. I think he can be very advantageous there. And if you pair him with somebody like N'Golo Kante and Jorginho, you have a very nicely balanced midfield. You pretty much have everything there except for maybe like power and size. But you can get that, say, from Ruben Loftus-Cheek. You replace Ruben Loftus-Cheek with Mason Mount and you get that same sort of like power. And maybe that's the more perfect mix that I'd like to see. But since Ruben's not quite back yet, I think Mason Mount in that deeper sort of like number 8 role or the exalted number 10 role is the best balance that we can put together in the midfield right now. But I like what I see. I think there's a good energy around the club right now. The squad is adapting really well. And we're starting to see evolving partnerships start to emerge on the pitch. We're starting to see a partnership between Tomori, Christensen, Jorginho, Jorginho, Mount to Abraham. And when you start to look at that, you start to see, it's a young spine, but you're starting to see a spine develop there as well. So now the next evolution on the pitch is down the flanks, and we've seen the return of Callum Hudson-Odoi, who had a fantastic cameo against Brighton. And then we're seeing Reece James as well, who is very, very good in the cup game, and we're starting to see him starting to integrate himself into the squad. And once those types of partnerships start to form, where we're seeing our wingers link very well with our attackers, link very well with our fullbacks, our wing backs, however you want to call them, then we're starting to see that there's more of a cohesiveness throughout the squad, and that's where you start getting everyone on the same wavelength. And by wavelength, I mean everyone reading from the same songbook, basically everyone thinking the game at the same pace and playing at the same pace, and everyone being in tune with each other, basically. And I think the one thing that was evident throughout the match for me was certain guys were playing at one tempo and certain guys were playing at a lot slower tempo. I thought Barkley, when we were trying to speed up the tempo and play, in between the lines a bit, he'd take 3, 4, or 5 touches and then just completely slow the move down. And then as a result, Brighton would readjust their defense over and we'd have to start over again. That's what I mean by wavelength. Like, he has to be thinking the game at the same pace as, say, Jorginho was, as, say, Mason Mount was for large parts of that game. Perfect example of a team that was on the 100% the right wavelength, and there's so much chemistry between them. And perhaps the best footballing side I've seen in quite some time was that Barcelona team 2011. Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, David Villa, Pedro. All these guys were just so well in tune with each other and playing at the exact same tempo, like thinking at the exact same tempo. And of course they had brilliance all over the pitch, nobody's debating that, but I think what made them a great squad was the fact that they were able to get everyone to think the game at the same pace and execute at the same pace. Couple that, like the speed of thought with like the brilliant technique that they had, the results were devastating. I think one of the key elements to Chelsea's game that allowed them to start matches very quickly is their team pressing game. From minute 1 to minute 20, you usually find Chelsea press really high up the pitch to put pressure on the defense and force turnovers. And in the second phase of the half, when we're trying to conserve energy and maybe recuperate a bit, we're allowing teams to come on to us, and that's where we're finding ourselves to be most vulnerable. And that's a complete opposite to the first year we had under Antonio Conte, where when we sat back deeper and allowed teams to come on to us, it was when we were at our most dangerous. That title season can be attributed to 3 things for me. I think first was the squad was extremely fit, probably the most fit squad in the EPL that year, and it allowed Antonio Conte to use the press to his advantage for a lot longer stretches than some other teams would, where some teams would be taking 10 minutes to do go through their press sequence. Antonio Conte was extending it to 20 minutes and then asking for it again maybe 5 minutes later for more press. And when we got the goal, we were able to sit back very compact and be very organized. And that 3-4-3 was very, very difficult for teams to break down once we got up 1 goal, 2 goals, because we can just sit deeper and the spaces to exploit became very hard to find. I'd say the final thing would be the clinical aspect of that squad. Like, we didn't need a lot of chances to win games. Like, we can win the game on 2 good chances because we take 1 of them, or we get 2 really good chances and then concede 1 and defend well enough to weather any sort of storm. But currently, I don't think we have the squad that's capable of sit deep and absorb pressure that we were under, say, Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho, for instance. Right now, I feel like if we sit deep, we're exposing ourselves and we're allowing teams to find gaps of space to exploit. I also think we need to be more clinical when we're given opportunities like we had in the first half against Brighton. There was like at least 4 or 5 gilt-edge opportunities where we thought Chelsea were going to score, and for whatever reason we fluffed it. So with those 2 things, I think that if Chelsea improve markedly, we're going to see a great change. The clinical aspect of the squad, and then also the ability to allow ourselves to soak up pressure and still not make ourselves vulnerable. But I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Chelsea emerged 2-0 winners on Saturday against Brighton Hove, and we look great. Like, Jorginho clearly was man of the match for me. He was all over the place and making it all happen in the middle of the pitch as well. We're starting to see these great partnerships forming, like I said earlier. I'm really enjoying that. I think that that's going to be the bedrock of this team going forward, that nice spine that seems to be developing. And what could be said about, like, even Fikayo Tomori right now? This guy is indispensable in that back 4 right now. He is, like, I can't think of that back 4 without having him in it now. Like, he has to be there, regardless of who's fit and who's not. He is the guy. He's probably, like, I know Frank said he's either number 1 or number 2. I don't know if we have a more important center back right now at the club, mainly because he's left-sided. He's 2-footed. He can use his left and his right equally as well, and he is so fast. Like, he makes up for so many different mistakes that we see on the pitch. So shout out to him, man. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing him develop. And of course, imagine him now with like Reece James, and then we have the return of Emerson at some point, and maybe Rudiger. Like, that back 4 to me is starting to look like it could have some teeth in it. Like a really formidable back 4. And we move on though. We got the midweek game, we got a huge game in the Champions League, which is why I think that Frank decided to rest as many as he did. We didn't see a lot of Kovacic, and we definitely didn't see a N'Golo Kanté, because we have to win this game against Lille this Wednesday, and it's a must-win game, and we can't have any sort of like hiccups there. If we lose that game, we can almost guarantee that we're not advancing in the Champions League, and I'm sure that's not something that Frank wants to see from match week 2. So all guns blazing for that one. It's away, it's in France, so we're gonna have to travel and then come back, and I think we have Newcastle at the weekend. Not quite sure, but I think if it's not Newcastle, it's another team that we should be able to get 3 points from. So let's hope that we can. But until then, keep the blue flag flying high and up the Chelsea.